Let me ask you something. What if the difference between someone who builds real wealth and someone who spends their whole life struggling isn't discipline? Isn't hustle? Isn't even luck? What if it's something quieter than that? You've probably met someone, maybe a coworker, maybe a friend, maybe someone in your family, who never seemed to be doing too much. Never talked about money. Never posted about gains. Never followed some guru on Twitter. And yet, somehow, they just kept building. Slowly. Consistently. Almost invisibly. And you thought, what do they know that I don't? Here's what I found out. It's not what they know. It's how they think. High IQ people don't have a secret investment strategy. They don't have a magic app or a better salary. What they have are habits, rare, almost invisible habits, that most people walk right past without ever noticing. And today, we're going to slow down and look at exactly 5 of them. Not to copy them blindly, but to understand them. Because when you understand how someone thinks, you start to think differently too. Most people set goals. High IQ people build systems. And I know that sounds like something you've heard before. But stay with me, because the difference goes deeper than you think. When the average person decides they want to save money, they set a number. I want to save $10,000 this year. They write it down. They feel motivated for about 3 weeks. And then life happens. An unexpected bill. A bad month. A moment of weakness. And the goal starts to feel like a reminder of everything they haven't done yet. But here's what the person quietly building wealth does differently. They don't ask, how much do I want? They ask, what needs to be true every single month for this to work automatically? That's the shift. From outcome to infrastructure. Think about water. You don't tell water to flow downhill. You don't motivate it. You don't remind it every morning. You just build the right channel, and it flows. That's what a financial system does. It removes the need for daily willpower. It makes the right move the default move. High IQ people understand something fundamental about human psychology. We are not rational creatures who occasionally get emotional. We are emotional creatures who occasionally get rational. And they design their financial lives around that truth. Automatic transfers. Separate accounts for separate purposes. Rules that don't require a decision in the moment. Not because they're robots, but because they know that in the moments that matter, when you're tired, when you're stressed, when the weekend is calling, your best intentions don't stand a chance against a poorly designed environment. So they design the environment first. And let behavior follow. The goal isn't discipline. The goal is to need as little discipline as possible. That's not laziness. That's intelligence applied to real life. Here's something that will make you uncomfortable. Most people make financial decisions based on what they feel right now. High IQ people make financial decisions based on what they're willing to not know yet. Let me explain that. We live in a world that rewards speed. Fast takes. Instant opinions. Breaking news that breaks your focus before you even understand what happened. And that energy bleeds into money. People buy because something feels right. They sell because something feels wrong. They move their entire strategy based on a headline they read at 11 p.m. when they were already anxious about something else entirely. And they call it being informed. But real financial intelligence looks different. It looks like someone who hears about a new investment trend and says, "Interesting, I'll come back to that in 30 days. It looks like someone who watches the market drop and doesn't open their portfolio app. Not because they don't care, but because they've already decided that their 30-year-old self is not going to be held hostage by their 30-year-old emotions. There's a concept in psychology called delayed gratification. You know it. The marshmallow test. But what people rarely talk about is its lesser-known cousin, delayed information processing. The ability to sit with uncertainty. To not react. To let the noise settle before you move. That's rare. Genuinely rare. Because silence feels like losing ground. Waiting feels like missing out. And in a world built to trigger your fear of missing out every 7 seconds, choosing to wait is almost a radical act. High IQ people aren't emotionless. They feel the pull. They see the trend. They feel the fear. They just don't let the feeling write the check. Nobody talks about this one. And it might be the most important of all. Your attention is not free. Every time you spend an hour scrolling through financial content, watching someone explain why this stock is going to explode, or listening to a podcast that leaves you more confused than when you started, you paid for that. Not with money. With something you can never get back. High IQ people understand that attention is the first currency. Before dollars. Before euros. Before any number in any account. And they protect it like it's scarce. Because it is. Think about it this way. Your brain has a daily budget of cognitive energy. Every decision you make, small or large, draws from that budget. What to eat. What to wear. What to watch. What to read. Each one costs something. And by the time you sit down to make an actual financial decision, you might be running on empty without even knowing it. There's a reason some of the most financially successful people in history wore the same style of clothes every day. Ate the same breakfast. Kept their environments deliberately simple. It wasn't a personality quirk. It was a strategy. They were protecting their most valuable resource for the decisions that actually moved the needle. But here's where it gets personal. Most people in their 20s are spending their peak cognitive hours consuming. Scrolling. Reacting. Absorbing other people's opinions about money without ever sitting down quietly with their own. And then they wonder why they feel financially paralyzed. Why they know so much and do so little. It's not a knowledge problem. It's an attention problem. High IQ people don't consume more financial content. They consume less. But they go deeper. They sit with one idea until it becomes a decision. Until it becomes a habit. Until it becomes a result. Depth over volume. Every single time. Because at the end of the day, what you pay attention to is what you build. And what you ignore is what you lose, slowly, quietly, without ever noticing it was happening. Most people think high IQ individuals are cautious with money. Calculated. Conservative. Playing it safe behind spreadsheets and probability models. And some of them are. But that's not the whole picture. What's actually true is something more nuanced. And more useful. High IQ people don't avoid risk. They redefine it. For most people, risk means losing money. A bad investment. A business that fails. A market that drops. Risk lives in the outcome. It's something that happens to you. But for someone who thinks deeply about money, risk is something else entirely. Risk is not knowing why you made a decision. Risk is moving without understanding what you're actually betting on. Risk is confusing familiarity with safety, which is one of the most expensive mistakes a person can make. Let me give you an example that hits close to home. Keeping all your money in a savings account feels safe. It feels responsible. It feels like the opposite of risk. But if inflation is running at 4% and your savings account is paying you 1%, you are losing money every single year. Quietly. Invisibly. With the full feeling of security. That's not safety. That's slow erosion with a comfortable name. High IQ people see that. And it makes them more willing to take what looks like risk from the outside, because they've already done the harder work of calculating what the real risk actually is. They also understand something about failure that most people don't. Failure in a contained, calculated bet is information. It tells you something true about the world that no book could have told you. And that information, if you're paying attention, is worth more than the money you lost. They don't celebrate failure. Nobody sane does. But they don't treat it as evidence that they should stop. They treat it as data. And they adjust. There's a word for people who never take any risk with their money. It's not safe. It's not smart. It's stagnant. And stagnant water, no matter how still it looks, is never clean for long. This is the habit that separates people who look wealthy from people who actually are. And it lives in a single question that most people never think to ask. Not how much does this cost? But what will this actually cost me? Those are two completely different questions. And the gap between them is where most financial lives quietly fall apart. Here's what I mean. A car payment of $400 a month looks manageable. It fits in the budget. It doesn't feel like a big number. But $400 a month over 5 years is $24,000. And that's before insurance. Before maintenance. Before the way that car loses value the moment you drive it off the lot. Before the opportunity cost of what that money could have become if it had been working for you instead of sitting in a depreciating asset. The price was $400. The cost was something far larger. And most people never did that math, not because they couldn't, but because nobody told them to look that far ahead. High IQ people are obsessed with that second number. The real number. The full number. They apply it to everything. Subscriptions that auto-renew. Convenience fees that feel small but stack invisibly. Lifestyle upgrades that come with permanent new baselines. That dinner out that turns into a habit that turns into $600 a month you never consciously chose to spend. But here's the other side of this habit. And this is the part people miss. They apply the same thinking to investments. To opportunities. To relationships. To knowledge. When someone with genuine financial intelligence sees something that costs $500 but could return value for the next 20 years, they don't see a $500 expense. They see a $500 entry point into something that compounds. They flip the question both ways. Every cost has a price. But every price also has a potential cost of not paying it. And that second calculation, the cost of inaction, the cost of staying comfortable, the cost of choosing the safe road that quietly leads nowhere, that's the one that changes everything. Most people budget their expenses. High IQ people budget their trade-offs. And that single shift in thinking, from what does this take from me to what does this decision actually mean for where I'm going, that's not just financial literacy. That's financial maturity. If you've made it here, all the way to this point in the video, I want to take just a second to say something directly to you. Not as a channel. As a person. Most people don't make it this far. They click. They skim. They move on. But you stayed. And that tells me something about you. It tells me you're not here for the noise. You're here because something in this conversation felt real. Felt true. Felt like something you needed to hear. So if that's you, hit that subscribe button. Come back tomorrow. And the day after. Because what we're building here isn't content. It's a place where we slow down and think clearly about the things that actually shape a life. And honestly, the world needs more of that right now. But let me bring you back to something. Because there's one thread we haven't tied together yet, and it might be the most important one. We've talked about systems. About patience. About attention, risk, and real cost. But underneath all 5 of these habits, there's something quieter running. A foundation. Something that isn't a strategy or a framework or a tip you can screenshot and forget about. It's a relationship with time. High IQ people think in longer cycles than most. Not because they're smarter in the traditional sense. But because somewhere along the way, through experience, through loss, through paying attention, they learn that the most powerful financial moves are almost always invisible in the short term. You don't see the compound interest working. You don't feel the system running. You don't notice the attention you protected, the risk you calibrated, the true cost you calculated, until one day, years later, you look back and realize that every quiet decision added up to something undeniable. That's not a trick. That's not a hack. That's what playing the long game actually looks like from the inside. So here's where we land. 5 habits. None of them flashy. None of them trending. None of them the kind of thing that gets a million views on a Saturday morning. But all of them real. And maybe that's the point. We live in a world that is constantly selling you the shortcut. The system that works in 30 days. The investment that changes everything. The one weird trick that the wealthy don't want you to know. And after a while, all of that noise starts to feel like the only option. Like if you're not moving fast, you're falling behind. But the people who actually build something lasting, they're not running. They're not chasing. They're not refreshing their portfolio at midnight with their heart in their throat. They're thinking. Quietly. Clearly. Over long stretches of time. They built systems and let them run. They sat with uncertainty and didn't flinch. They protected their attention like it was the most valuable thing they owned, because it is. They redefined risk as ignorance, not loss. And they learned to ask not what something costs, but what it truly means. None of that is genius. Not in the way we usually mean the word. It's something older than genius. Something quieter. It's wisdom applied to the one area of life where most people only apply emotion. And here's what I want to leave you with. You already know most of this. Some part of you, the part that stayed through this entire video, already understood it before I said a word. You felt it. In the moments after a bad financial decision. In the quiet regret of a purchase that didn't fill what you thought it would fill. In the strange peace you felt the one time you chose patience over impulse. You already know. The question was never whether you were smart enough. The question is whether you're ready to act like it. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in a future. Jeremiah 29 verse 11. If this video made you think, even for a moment, hit that subscribe button and come back tomorrow. Share this with 5 people who need to hear it. Not because it'll help the channel, but because someone in your life is making a financial decision right now based on noise. And maybe this is the thing that helps them slow down. And drop a comment below. Tell me something real. What was the habit that hit you hardest? And if you have a topic you want us to go deep on next, leave it there. I read them. And I build from them. See you in the next one.